The Afghan night was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and reminds you that you're far from home. Master Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison lay perfectly still on the rocky ridge, his ghillie suit blending seamlessly with the barren landscape. At 38 years old, Jake had spent more time looking through a rifle scope than most men had spent watching television. His weathered face told the story of 16 years in naval special warfare. Deep lines around his eyes from squinting against desert sun and mountain snow. A scar across his left cheek from a Taliban blade in Kandahar. But it was his eyes that told the real story. Pale blue eyes that had seen things no man should see, and done things that kept him awake at night. Jake's rifle was an extension of his body. The 13 Malawian Quach's Mod 7 sniper rifle had been with him through 4 deployments. He knew every scratch on the stock, every slight imperfection in the barrel. This weapon had taken 147 confirmed lives, each one recorded in a small notebook he kept in his left chest pocket, right next to a photo of his daughter, 8-year-old Emma. She would be turning 9 in 3 days. Jake had promised her he would be home for her birthday this time. He'd missed the last 2, but this deployment was supposed to be over. Just one more mission, they'd said. Just one more intelligence-gathering operation in Helmand Province. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where everything seemed hopeless, but someone came through when it mattered most? Have you experienced the kind of brotherhood and loyalty that these warriors share? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone who needs to hear it. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of the incredible sacrifices our military makes every single day, hit that subscribe button. These heroes deserve to have their stories told, and their legacy deserves to be remembered. Remember, a warrior is always a warrior, and no one gets left behind. The mission brief had been straightforward. A Taliban commander named Zahir Khan was meeting with his lieutenants in a compound in the Sanjin district. SEAL Team 4, consisting of 12 of the Navy's finest warriors, would infiltrate under cover of darkness, capture or eliminate Khan, and extract before dawn. Jake's role was Overwatch, a guardian angel positioned on a ridge 800 meters from the target compound, providing early warning and eliminating any threats that might compromise the team. But intelligence is only as good as its source, and tonight, the source was dead wrong. Through his night vision scope, Jake watched the 12-man SEAL team move through the valley below. They moved like ghosts, each man in perfect sync with the others. These weren't just soldiers. They were brothers forged in the crucible of war. Jake knew most of them personally. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, callsign Hawk, led the team. At 34, Marcus was one of the youngest officers to command a SEAL platoon, but he'd earned the respect of every man under his command. He'd pulled Jake out of a burning vehicle in Fallujah back in 2008. They'd been friends ever since. Senior Chief Dan Foster, Bear, was Marcus's second-in-command. The man was built like a tank, 6 feet 4 inches and 240 pounds of pure muscle. But it was his tactical mind that made him invaluable. Bear could read terrain like some men read books. Petty Officer First Class Tommy Rodriguez, Doc, was the team medic. The 28-year-old from San Diego had magic hands. Jake had watched him perform field surgery under enemy fire more times than he could count. The list went on. 12 of America's finest warriors, moving toward what they thought was a routine capture operation. Jake's radio earpiece crackled to life. "Reaper, this is Hawk. We're approaching phase line Alpha. Status check." Jake scanned the compound through his scope. "Hawk, Reaper. I've got eyes on target building. No external movement. Thermal signature shows approximately 6 individuals inside. Looks clean. Copy that, Reaper. We're going in." Jake watched as the team split into 3 4-man elements. Textbook SEAL tactics. Alpha element would breach the main entrance. Bravo would secure the perimeter. Charlie would provide rear security and cover the extraction route. Everything was going according to plan. That should have been his first warning. The explosion tore through the night like the wrath of God. Jake's scope filled with fire and smoke as an IED detonated directly under Alpha Element's position. The blast was massive, precisely placed to inflict maximum casualties. "AD! AD!" Voices screamed over the radio. Man down. Multiple casualties. But that was just the beginning. The mountains around the compound erupted with muzzle flashes. Machine gun fire tore through the darkness from at least 8 different positions. The Taliban had turned the entire valley into a kill zone, and the SEALs had walked right into it. Contact. Contact on all sides. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. This is Hawk. We are surrounded. I repeat, we are surrounded and taking heavy casualties. Jake's training kicked in. Emotion was the enemy. Fear was the enemy. Right now, his brothers needed him to be a machine. He began scanning for targets, his breathing slow and controlled, his heart rate dropping despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. First target. Taliban fighter on a rooftop, 200 meters from the SEAL position, firing an RPK machine gun. Jake's crosshairs settled on the man's chest. Breathe out. Squeeze. The rifle barked. Through his scope, Jake watched the fighter drop. But one kill meant nothing. The Taliban had numbers, position, and surprise. For every fighter Jake eliminated, 3 more seemed to appear. Reaper, Hawk. Marcus's voice was strained. We're pinned down in a dried irrigation ditch. We've got 3 wounded, 1 critical. Charlie Element is separated on the south side. We need immediate SAS. Close air support. Jake knew the answer before he called it in. Hawk. Reaper. Nearest air support is 2 hours out. Apache gunships are engaged in Kandahar. There was a pause on the radio. When Marcus spoke again, Jake could hear something he'd never heard in his friend's voice before. Desperation. Reaper, we're fged. I repeat, we are fged. We can't hold this position for 2 hours. Jake's jaw clenched. Through his scope, he could see the situation deteriorating by the second. The SEALs were trapped in a shallow ditch that provided minimal cover. Taliban fighters were maneuvering to flank them from both sides. Worse, he could see what the team on the ground couldn't. A group of fighters setting up a DSHK heavy machine gun on a ridge that would give them a perfect angle into the SEAL position. If that gun opened up, the team would be cut to pieces. Hawk. Reaper. I see your situation. I'm going to work. What Jake didn't tell his friend was that the shots he was about to attempt were nearly impossible. The Taliban positions were scattered across the mountainside at ranges from 500 to 900 meters. The wind was gusting unpredictably through the valleys. His angle was extreme, and he was alone with no spotter to help him calculate the variables. But Jake Morrison didn't become the most feared sniper in SEAL team history by playing it safe. Target 1. DSHK machine gun crew, 847 meters. 3 fighters working to mount the massive weapon on its tripod. Jake calculated quickly the wind, the elevation, the Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation at this latitude. He adjusted his scope, elevated for the extreme distance, and controlled his breathing. The first fighter dropped. The second spun and fell before his brain could process that his friend was dead. The third ran, and Jake's bullet caught him mid-stride. Hawk. Heavy MG crew neutralized. Reaper. How the hell did you make that shot? Jake was already scanning for his next target. Magic, Hawk. Now shut up and let me work. What followed was a masterclass in precision shooting. Jake moved through targets with mechanical efficiency, each shot calculated, each kill purposeful. A Taliban commander directing fighters from a high position. An RPG gunner preparing to fire into the SEAL position. A sniper trying to gain angle on the wounded SEALs. But for every fighter Jake eliminated, the situation grew more desperate. Doc's voice came over the radio, professional but urgent. Hawk. It's document Foster's hit bad. Sucking chest wound. Rodriguez has shrapnel in his legs. Jackson's unconscious, possible TBI. I need to get them stabilized, but I can't work with this much fire coming in. Jake could see Doc through his scope, working frantically on Bear's massive form while bullets kicked up dirt around them. The medic's hands were steady even as death whistled past his head. Reaper, can you suppress the shooters on our east side? Marcus asked. Doc needs 30 seconds. Jake scanned the eastern ridge for Taliban fighters with AK-47s, firing from behind rocks. The range was 680 meters, and they were partially concealed. He had maybe 6 inches of target to work with on each man. Give me 10 seconds. Then Doc has his 30. For shots. For bodies. 10 seconds. Clear east. Doc, do your work. But Jake knew the math wasn't in their favor. He was one man with approximately 80 rounds of ammunition left. The Taliban had over 60 fighters and seemingly unlimited ammunition. The SEALs couldn't move, couldn't fight their way out, couldn't call in artillery support without risking hitting friendly forces. They were dying by inches, and Jake was watching it happen through a scope. That's when Marcus made the call that would haunt Jake forever. Reaper, Hawk, listen to me carefully. We can't hold this position. We're combat ineffective. Half the team is wounded. We're down to our last magazines. There was a pause. I need you to call in fire on our position. Jake's blood ran cold. Say again, Hawk? Call in fire on our position, Reaper. Danger close. We can't let them take us alive, and we can't extract the wounded under this fire. At least this way, some of us might survive the blast, and you can guide rescue to our location. Negative, Hawk. Negative. I'm not calling steel on your position. That's an order, Master Chief. Jake's hands were shaking. For the first time in 16 years, his iron control was breaking. These were his brothers. Marcus had saved his life. Bear had been at his wedding. Doc had held Emma when she was born. Marcus, please, give me time. I can thin them out. We don't have time, Jake. Another 10 minutes and we'll all be dead or captured. Call in the fire. Jake's finger hovered over the radio. He could see the scene below with terrible clarity. Wounded men bleeding in the dirt. Doc working frantically to keep Bear alive. Young men who would never see their families again. And then Jake saw something. Something the Taliban didn't know he could see from his elevated position. A dried riverbed, mostly concealed by the terrain, that led from the SEAL position toward a valley that would provide cover from the Taliban positions. It was a long shot. Literally. The route was exposed for about 200 meters, and the Taliban had overlapping fields of fire covering most of it. But there was a blind spot, maybe 30 meters wide, where the terrain created a dead zone. If the SEALs could get to that corridor, and if Jake could keep the Taliban suppressed long enough, they might have a chance. Hawk, negative on the fire mission. I've got a plan, but you need to trust me. Reaper, shut up and listen, Marcus. There's a dried riverbed at your 7 o'clock, about 15 meters from your position. It's concealed from most of the Taliban positions. If you can get your wounded into that riverbed and move west for 200 meters, you'll reach dead ground. But you'll be exposed for about 45 seconds in the middle of the movement. That's suicide, Jake. They'll cut us to pieces. Not if I'm shooting. I need you to pop smoke and move on my signal. Green smoke when you're in position. I'll create a wall of fire that'll keep their heads down long enough for you to move. There was a long pause. Jake could almost see Marcus weighing the options. Certain death from artillery, or probable death trying to move under fire. Okay, Reaper, we're trusting you. But if this goes wrong, it won't. Get your boys ready. What Jake was about to attempt had never been done in the history of modern warfare. He needed to engage multiple targets across a 600-meter front, at varying ranges in rapid succession, while the SEALs moved through the danger area. One missed shot, 1 second of hesitation, and his brothers would die. Jake reached into his chest pocket and pulled out the photo of Emma. She was smiling, missing her 2 front teeth, holding up a drawing she'd made of him. "I love you, Daddy," was written in purple crayon at the top. He kissed the photo and put it back in his pocket. "Okay, baby girl, let's bring Daddy home." The green smoke bloomed in the darkness below. Moving. Marcus's voice. Jake's world narrowed to the scope. Target. Breathe. Shoot. Target. Breathe. Shoot. He moved through the Taliban positions like the Reaper he was nicknamed for, each shot perfectly placed, each kill buying his brother's precious seconds. A fighter rising to fire. Down. Another leveling an RPG. Down. A machine gunner swinging his weapon toward the moving SEALs. Down. Jake's rifle was getting hot. His shoulder ached from the recoil. Sweat dripped into his eyes despite the cold. Through his scope, he could see the SEALs moving. Bear was being carried by 2 men, unconscious but alive. Doc had Rodriguez over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. They were making it to the riverbed. But then Jake saw it. 3 Taliban fighters with a clear line of sight to the exposed section. They were 725 meters away, partially concealed behind rocks, and they were tracking the SEALs' movement. Jake had maybe 5 seconds before they opened fire. The shot was nearly impossible. Extreme angle, unknown wind at that distance, targets that were barely visible. He centered the crosshairs on the first fighter's head. At this range, a chest shot might not be immediately fatal. He needed instant kills. Breathe. The world slowed down. Jake could hear his heartbeat, slow and steady despite the chaos. He could feel the wind on his face, calculating its effect on the bullet's trajectory. Shoot. The first fighter's head snapped back. Jake was already moving to the second target. No time to confirm the kill. Trust the training. Trust the weapon. Shoot. The second fighter dropped. The third man was turning, realizing his friends were dying around him, trying to locate the source of the shots. Jake's crosshairs found him. Breathe. Shoot. All 3 down in less than 4 seconds. Clear. Keep moving. The SEALs reached the safety of the dead ground. They'd made it, but Jake knew they weren't out of danger yet. The Taliban would be searching for them, and the team still had wounded who couldn't move quickly. Hawk, Reaper, you need to keep moving west. There's a ridge line about 400 meters from your position that'll give you solid cover. I'll continue suppression and guide you through. For the next 40 minutes, Jake worked his rifle like a master craftsman. He eliminated threats before they developed. He fired suppressive shots that made the Taliban think they were facing a much larger force. He used tracer rounds to redirect the enemy's attention away from the moving SEALs. His ammunition was running low, down to his last magazine, 20 rounds. But the SEALs were almost to safety. Just a little farther, that's when Jake's world exploded in pain. The bullet struck Jake's left shoulder, spinning him partially around. The impact was like being hit with a sledgehammer. Through the pain, Jake's mind registered what had happened. A Taliban scout had flanked his position, climbing up the backside of the ridge. Jake rolled, bringing his sidearm up. The Sig Sauer P226 barked 3 times. The Taliban fighter fell. But Jake was hit bad. Blood was pouring from the wound. His left arm was useless, and his sniper rifle was out of reach, knocked away by the impact of the bullet. Reaper, what was that? Report. Marcus's voice was frantic. Jake keyed his radio with his good hand. Hawk, Reaper, I'm hit, but I'm still operational. Keep moving. Negative, Reaper. We're coming for you. Like hell you are. You've got wounded who need immediate evac. Keep moving to the extraction point. That's an order. Jake crawled to his rifle, each movement sending waves of agony through his body. He managed to get into a shooting position, but his left arm couldn't support the weapon properly. He'd have to shoot right-handed only, using a rock to steady the barrel. Through his scope, he could see more Taliban fighters moving toward the SEALs' position. They weren't giving up. They wanted those American commandos, and they were willing to die to get them. Jake had 15 rounds left. He made each one count as dawn began to break over the Afghan mountains. Jake heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Helicopter rotors. 2 Apache attack helicopters screamed over the ridgeline, their 30mm cannons tearing into the Taliban positions. Behind them came a Black Hawk with a quick reaction force. The cavalry had arrived. Reaper, Hawk, extraction birds are inbound to your position. We're not leaving without you. Jake smiled through the pain. Copy that, Hawk. Tell Emma I'll be home for her birthday. 3 weeks later, Jake Morrison stood in the garden of his Virginia Beach home, his left arm in a sling, watching Emma blow out 9 candles on her birthday cake. Bear was there, recovered enough to limp around with a cane. Doc was grilling hamburgers. Marcus was telling embarrassing stories to Jake's wife, Sarah, making her laugh. They were alive. All 12 SEALs had made it home. 3 with serious injuries, but alive. The official after-action report would credit Jake with 37 confirmed kills in a single engagement, performed under extreme conditions at ranges that exceeded standard sniper doctrine. It was the most successful sniper engagement in SEAL team history. But Jake didn't care about records or medals. He cared about the men in his backyard, his brothers alive and laughing. That night, after the party, Emma climbed into Jake's lap, careful of his injured shoulder. "Daddy, why do they call you Reaper?" Jake thought about the question, about the death he'd dealt, about the lives he'd taken, about the prices paid in blood and pain. Because, baby girl, sometimes the Reaper doesn't come to take lives. Sometimes he comes to save them. Emma hugged him tight. "I like that story better." So did Jake. So did he.